And we are live. Welcome back to the Barnes Bays Book Club. It's been a minute, y'all, since we got together to talk about things. It feels like Crooked Kingdom was an age ago, and also that was the most chaotic live show of my life. I truly did not come into it prepared at all, but this is a different live show. So hello, we're all going to introduce ourselves and give a rating of the book and then get into it. I am Paige, you're on my channel, and I think I would give King of Scars 4 stars, leaning toward 5, but I do have some problems with it.
Hi, I'm Dulcie, and I would also give King of Scars 4 out of 5 stars.
Hello, I'm Hannah. I would give most of it 4 out of 5, except for the Nina part, which I don't know how to rate that. So that when I give my 4, it's for all the other parts. So I don't know how I would rate the whole book.
There.
Hi, I'm Kira. I think I'm gonna give it a 3.8. It didn't slap the way I wanted it to, exactly, but I'm willing to change my mind. I'm willing to be convinced today to get it up to a 4.
Wow.
I'm an Ice. I was very close to rating this a 5, and then with the ending, it got demoted. It's a 4 now. We'll see.
I see. Okay, we'll get into it. First, I need to give the people a synopsis of the book. I've written it down because a lot happens, and I'm going to read it verbatim, so just ignore me while I'm looking at my phone. Nikolai is a demon boy. That is how we begin this book. Zoya whoops his ass because he's about to kill a kid in a goose farm. We get a glimpse into the tricky politics that play in Ravka now that the fold is gone. They need money from the Kirch, who will only give it to them if they share weaponry blueprints for submarines, but the Kirch will only use those weapons against the Zemeni, who Ravka needs Jurda from in order to produce a cure for Perem. If you have not read any of these books, none of that would have made sense to you, so clearly you need to read the first 5 books in the series in order to understand this book. They decide that Nikolai needs to get married in order to secure alliances and also to sort of align for the throne in case he becomes full demon daddy. Meanwhile, in Fjerda, Nina is playing spy and saving Grisha. She's also looking around Matthias's dead body, looking for a place to bury it and talking to him in her head. The voices of dead women lead her, Adric, and a new character, Leonie, into a small town where there's a mysterious factory poisoning the waters and where women go missing. Nina meets Hannah, a hot Fjerdan girl who dresses up as a guy and rides horses, and she's obviously a simp on first sight. Back in Ravka, we learn that there's apparently a cult that is now worshipping the Darkling, which I was fucking annoyed by, calling him the Saint Without Stars or some bullshit like that. Nick invites the leader of that cult to tea and discovers that there might be a cure for his inner demon. Don't we all wish it was so easy? So they set out to the fold thanks to some clues like bone bridges and shit being brought to life near those areas and all pointing toward the fold. And Zoya has a fit that lands them in an alternate dimension with some real saints who say that they can train them and get the demon out of Nick. Zoya loses her amplifier thanks to a dragon who also trains her to use her magic better because now it's magic, fully, it's not a small science anymore. The Grisha back at the palace don't know where they've gone because they've literally disappeared into thin air. So they decide to tailor a sweet guard named Isaac, who is one of my favorite characters of the book, to pretend to be Nick for marriage festivities. And we get to see some of his perspective for the rest of the book. Back in Fjerda, Nina discovers that 1, Hannah's actually Jarl Brum's daughter, which I literally physically gasped at when he reappeared. I was shook. And 2, he's been hiding Grisha, aka the disappearing women, up at the mysterious factory to get them pregnant and control them with the Jurda Param, but a fake version of it. She decides that they're going to break them out, and they do so, but they also destroy a dam and nearly kill all of the townspeople. And then the townspeople come to think that Adric and Leonie are saints because they saved them. Also, the name they give Adric as a saint is truly... I'm not gonna lie, I laughed. It was bad. Nina decides that they're gonna go to the Ice Palace to find the other Grisha who are probably being experimented on in Fjerda. Back in Ravka / the alternate reality, the sandcastle, I guess. Surprise, surprise, the saints who said that they wanted to give up their mythical power and their ever-eternal living, whatever, they were lying somewhat. The dragon was good, but the Rose Lady was bad. I truly don't remember any of their names, even though I literally read this hours ago. So we learned that the Rosalie's plan was actually just to free herself from this alternate reality, and she was going to use that Darkling to do that because the demon in Nikolai is actually the Horcrux of the Darkling, basically. He still lives on in this little soul. So she was going to transfer that into the cult leader's body because he came with them on this trip. Zoya kills the dragon, who was a good guy, but the Rose Lady tried to kill him. So she kills the dragon, takes his powers basically because he becomes like an amplifier for her. And I assume she's going to turn into a dragon in the next book at some point. She saves Nick from dying. Nick takes control of the demon again, but he doesn't get rid of it completely. It's still a part of him. They go back to the real world just in time for Nick to discover himself being assassinated by a shoe princess. But the shoe princess wasn't really a shoe princess because she was also an imposter, and it was a very Romeo and Juliet situation. And they discovered that the shoe actually had a plan to frame the Fjordans by killing the fake princess and the fake prince in order to start a war with Fjorda. And the biggest reveal of all we find at the end of this book is that the transfer of power for the Darkling actually kind of went through, and he exists again in this world in the body of the cult guy whose name I also don't remember at this point. And that is literally how the book, that's how the book ends. It's the Darkling being like, great to be among old friends again. And when I said I screamed.
She really went for plot in this one.
She did a lot. So my first question obviously is going to be, who was your favorite perspective to read from? Any new characters that you really liked? We'll talk about the Darkling later because that's the end of the book. But characters, how do we feel?
Obviously Zoya.
Yeah, I feel like
our girl needed to get her POV in there more.
Mm-hmm.
This should have been, I don't know why people call it the Nikolai duology, because I think I would have given it 5 stars if it was just Zoya all the time. Like, Isaac was okay as well. I could have lived with Isaac and Zoya. Nina needed to be out of this whole thing. I don't know if she needed her own book. I'm not saying her stuff wasn't important, but it just took me out of the story. Like, I just got so confused when I was reading it. But Zoya's part was just, I think we talked a lot in the beginning about how we weren't sure why we liked Zoya, and then by the end of the first trilogy, we're like, oh, okay, I see it. And now I'm like, I didn't read this book, but somehow I must have known, because I'm just like, who cares about anyone else? Zoya is the one true, like, that's it. She's my queen. And I feel like she is going to be the actual queen eventually. But yeah, Zoya, that was, I'm done.
Yeah, I feel like Leigh couldn't give us the background for Zoya in the first trilogy because then everybody would have just liked her more than they liked Lena. So they had to keep it separate because Zoya is her backstory is so much more interesting because of the sheer amount of shit that we see that she's gone through, like the marriage when she's 9 and she figures out she's a Grisha, and then her aunt leaving her. I literally almost cried at that part where she's like, don't look back at me, you have to go by yourself. That was very cute. And then the cub scene where she gets her first amplifier and she sacrifices herself to save the cubs and kills the white tiger. So yeah, I agree.
So now you know why it was at the very end of the TV series season where she's like, I'm gonna go to Novosibirsk and go see if my aunt is still there. It's really painful if you know the backstory of Zoya. And you're like,
oh, I didn't think about that.
She's not there.
I'm curious. Does she have the scene in the beginning of the show where she meets Mal for the first time and she's disrobing? Does she have the scars on? I wanted to go back and watch the show to see if I could notice that detail because I sort of felt like she did. Really? I thought they did because I read that and I was like, oh, this sounds like I could picture it almost like that scene. So
no, but wasn't it
time for a rewatch?
Did Mal see her amplifier and ask about it? Was it
he
that?
Saw the amplifier. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I remember that part distinctly. I don't remember the scars, but I could just have missed something. But Kira, you sound very sure. How many times have you rewatched?
I'm really not.
Oh, okay. I'm like, Kira's been watching.
I'm way more confident than I really feel inside.
Like rewatching all the Mal scenes, analyzing them.
Oh my god, specifically the Mal scenes. Yeah, I
No,
also
that's so
like I like
sad.
Nikolai's perspective, but I think I only liked it because he was like pining for Zoya, and that's what I was there for because I was also pining for Zoya.
I
So I was like,
liked
I get it there.
the. I didn't like the way it was done, but I liked the big exposition scene that we get from him when he's talking about his childhood and all that stuff. Part of me was like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Zoya's just sitting there waiting for you to think through all that. But like,
did
I
have
was
that
like,
thought
oh,
also.
okay, I'm interested in what you're telling me, but it like logistically, like,
Yeah.
that particular scene, it also ties in with the Isaac bit really nicely, like with the whole like how he met Isaac and his old friend Dominic, I think is his name,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
died, and all of that stuff. That was really, I thought that was well done. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
think
feel like
the Nikolai scenes were, I would have been okay with them as like support for Zoya. I just think this is Zoya. I don't think it's Nikolai's. I just don't think it's Nikolai's book. This is Zoya's book. Like if you
yeah,
look
I
at who
feel
goes through the most transformation and like the biggest character arc, it's Zoya. Like from like it's Zoya.
That's so true.
Like,
yeah, Zoya does have like the most, but I do feel like it's like all the backstory she gives now, it makes the trilogy better because it makes you understand Nikolai's character in the trilogy. Like I was saying, like I've seen this
Mhm.
character before, the second prince who wants to be like the ruler, but the fact that he did it out of pettiness because his older brother was shitty to him, I get behind that. I can appreciate that as a backstory. So I
Paige
feel like she
finally
like sort of
coming
learned
around.
from
Welcome.
yeah, like I didn't like him before, but I like him now. I'm like, okay, he's cool. Like I don't think he deserves Zoya, but he's cool enough that I'll read about
Nobody
him.
deserves Zoya. Excuse me, Alina. I want. Oh my God, we could have had Zoya and Alina.
Lol.
Excuse me, I need
What
a
do we think of? Me and Hannah also had the same opinion about Nina's perspective, but anybody else disagree with us? I think Anais, you disagree.
I like wanted it to be done differently. Like I wanted more sort of like the pregnant women. There were just like a lot of questions going on that I wish had been kind of like dealt with a little bit more, but I have always loved Nina and I like wanted more of her, and I think that like her parts had really good potential plot wise, so I was still super interested in them and like glad they were in there. I think they could have been, it didn't slap quite as hard as Zoya. It could have, though.
I really love Nina's storyline, even though she had to get like the first part is just super depressing. She's carrying around this body on ice.
Yeah.
But like once it gets into like the sort of mystery, I feel like she has like a mystery spy plot almost.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed that. I think my problem though, and why I also like gave the whole thing 4 out of 5 was just that it was so long for me. And I was like, if only somehow you could separate the two plots, then I would like enjoy it, because yeah, it was just, I remember reading it the first time, I was just like, this is really long. I'm really enjoying it, but also it's like, it's really long compared to, not to Six of Crows, but compared to the original trilogy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
My favorite part of Nina's.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kira. go.
I'm
I
shy.
think my favorite part of the
What?
I think my favorite part of Nina's plot was the point where she was sneaking in for the first time into the factory and you got to see the spy stuff, like her dressing up and her like pretending to cry, like all of that part I really enjoyed because it sort of like brought you back to Crow Nina time where she's like sort of like that was the part I really enjoyed. It was like the part before it where she's sort of like listless and not really sure what she wants to do. Like that part I was sort of like, I get what you're trying to build here, but compared to like the other plot where so much is happening, it feels like it's dragging. I've like read those on 2 speed and like would return to 1.5 for the Nikolai Zoya chapters because I was having more fun there. Are you still shy?
Yeah. I feel like I had an issue with this though when they introduced the Jurda Prim in the Six of Crows duology, but I'm just like really don't like the way they make it like this kind of like drug-addled, like people are becoming addiction, like the way she handles addiction like kind of rubs me the wrong way a little bit. And I understand obviously this isn't like
a consensual thing. Like these people are being abducted and it's like being done to them in a way, but I don't know. There's some weird tones that are written in there that makes it feel very like I get what it's doing for the plot, but I don't know that I like love the way she wrote it or did it or executed it. I think the more interesting parts were like, yeah, her being like getting back to herself a little bit more and like her starting to work with Hannah and like the parts where like Leonie's like, I'm so good at what I do. I'm just gonna like pull poison out of the air now and everyone can be chill with that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like that. I don't know that like all the other stuff was working for me and like it becoming like, oh, the whole time I was just talking like I was Matthias in my head. His voice has never actually been there. I was like, okay, why are we
I was
doing
disappointed by that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
thought
I
it was
was
going to be
like-
like, oh, she can talk to the dead in a way because
Yeah.
she literally raises an army. That's the other part I like, the army of the dead that she
Yeah.
raises. I was like, oh, this is kind of dark with the
But she
baby
spends-
crawling to the well mother.
We don't get to see her do anything with her powers until like the last bit, which I'm like,
Yeah.
girl, you know there's dead bodies there and you just now thought to use them at the end. Like this whole time
Mhm.
she could have used them. We don't get to see her use her powers until like sprinkles of it. I think my issue is similar to yours, Kira, in that I think the serious aspects of the Nina plot did not get enough. Like these women are being sexually raped, like they're being raped
Mhm.
and like given drugs and that kind of thing. And I'm like, we don't even talk about that at all. Like they're
Yeah.
all abducted, all of that stuff that's happening to them. And so while I didn't have a problem with the story plot wise, it just felt like the way that it was shoehorned with the other story. And I get that we're building to something bigger in Rule of Wolves probably, and like everything's gonna come together and all of that. But it just, I don't know how it could have been done differently, but it just felt like that storyline needed its own space to breathe and separate from the very, and also the tone of the tone of the Ravka story is so magic, like traditional fantasy, like dragons and like just very different. And meanwhile, in the Nina storyline, it's more like grounded, more gritty. And so just the two tones just like were very jarring for me when I was reading. Like when I would switch from one chapter to the other, I'm like, what's happening? It's like I'm reading two different books. And I did not
I
like
think
that at all. So
part of that's the Six of Crows meeting
yeah.
the original trilogy. It's because they're two very different, and I think that's why I had a problem with the Sandcastle bit, because it felt so far removed from everything else we were reading about, like political intrigue, Nina dealing with like the women being missing, like all of that felt like grounded and like slightly fantasy, but not really. And then we're literally with like saints in a magical realm where they're talking to a dragon and like all of that stuff. I was like, this feels kind of silly almost, and I don't quite like. I'm not like, my suspense of disbelief was harder to like get back.
I
into
find
the versions.
like that is like exactly the sticking point I have with like all of the Grishaverse, is that there are things that happen unexplained out of nowhere that don't really like live within the universe, and they're like, oh, this is new now, this can happen,
This is how we do things now. Like
yeah. And like I like the idea of like exploring that this is like older and bigger than you think, and I think that kind of piggybacks on the idea that like sort of how we saw with Morozova, like the saint stories that they were told were not actually like very true. They became something completely different. And so I kind of thought that idea that like the Grisha were meant to be something bigger was really compelling and interesting. But like, did they have to go to a secret sand world, like in a new dimension out of space and time? Like that part really felt too much.
yeah. Like what were they eating and drinking?
Time was still passing.
But was it though?
Time
Like
was passing fast.
it felt like they spent 2 days there.
The prince. So yeah, time was
No,
passing.
but like it felt like they, when you were reading the Nikolai and Zoya parts, it felt like they were there for like a week. Meanwhile,
yeah.
From the Isaac part that it's been like at least 6 weeks or something like that, because they were all talking about how they need to get back to the thing.
Because they were like, every time they were in the sand dimension, they're like, we don't sleep or eat, and that it's been
Like they wouldn't have known how many days had actually passed.
Yeah.
There was no passing of time in that space. They didn't have like
Yeah.
sunrise.
Were they
sunset. It was just, like,
sleeping?
No,
like
they
I
didn't
just
sleep.
I
They say explicitly they weren't.
oh, do
sleeping.
they?
Yeah,
Okay.
Nikolai was like he missed sleeping until they got
Yeah.
back to the real world, and
Yeah.
he's like, I'm never gonna like look over this again because I
Yeah.
love sleeping.
Yeah.
Basically.
I
I
guess.
also needed like more of an explanation on how Yuri like knew this stuff and how he and Elizaveta were like in cahoots the whole time. Like,
I think she sent the Darkling into the dream because he said the Darkling visited me. That was me being like
Yeah.
dream world. The Darkling
Right.
visited him, and I think that's how he knew what to do. This is our new thing.
okay, that does
Yeah.
make sense. But like, I just wanted it. Some of these, I would just appreciate. These books are so long as it is, and I appreciate the content, but I would appreciate like a little bit of like a like, okay, this is what's happened. Just like a little bit of a post-mortem, a little bit of a debrief to be like, this is how all these things happened so that it makes sense for you in hindsight. Like,
Yeah.
I don't need it all explained at the time because we're along for that ride and like it should be exciting and new. But yeah, at the end I was like, but what? How? I was that monkey meme.
Yeah.
Whatever it
Yes.
is.
Yes.
I still don't quite understand the whole like the stabbing thing. Like I don't quite understand how that whole thing went.
No,
like
I
I kind
skimmed
of get
that.
it, but like he stabbed himself. He didn't die, but he was dying, and then like I don't understand it. I was
Yeah.
just like,
That
okay,
whole
I'm just
part
gonna
was so
accept
confusing.
that somehow you survived, and Elizaveta died, and Yuri also survived somehow, which should have been our first red flag because it was like
You should have
Yuri.
been disposable.
Yeah, it was like Yuri and Nikolai shouldn't both have survived if the plan was for one of them. Like, anyways, it was just like. But also, now I have this question. So, the Darkling is back in Yuri, but Nikolai still has his powers. So,
Yeah.
He can
how
he has
does
still
Yuri
a bit of the
come?
demon in him. Yeah. They both have
So
a bit of
then,
the Darkling in them.
so like, does he have less
Thruple.
demon in him now? Like, what? And Yuri has
The
more. I
demon
don't
is
understand.
weaker. Yeah, the demon.
Okay.
He said like when he
Does
came
he
back,
say that? Okay.
when Zoya was like, "Did it work?" He was like, he told her it worked, but he was like, "But I don't want to tell her that I can still feel it
Okay.
inside me. It's like a little bit weaker and it's like
Okay.
wounded, but it's
Okay.
still there." Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Well, that's good. That goes to kind of show your point, though, Annalise, is that so much. Okay. So much has
That was the
happened.
demon.
Was that me or was that someone else? If it was me, sorry. That there is, like, I can kind of follow along, but I feel like I need a little bit more, like, because also I don't know, maybe I didn't pay enough attention, but I feel like some of it could be left to discussion, like what we're having right now. Like, it's not explicit, and I guess I don't need it to be explicit, but like I just need to follow along the plot and understand what happened.
Yeah.
And
And I
think
feel
part
like
of
that would
that's
be.
because Go
Sorry,
on,
you go,
please.
Paige.
I just think it's like because in the first trilogy, the magic was linked to science. It was like, this is a small science. It is explained. There's a reason we can do this. And now suddenly it's like, actually, it's all mythical. And there's these people who can turn into different like things. And we're not going to tell you how. So I think that was.
Oh my God, side
my
note, Grisha was addressed. That they're called
Greg.
Grisha because of Greg.
I said
was-
that. I
Gregory,
yelled.
I was like, I had to stop and just laugh for a second because I was like, I see what you're doing there, Leigh. Like, everyone called
They were
you out.
supposed to be called Gregs because of Greg.
But then, like, so I love that she did that. But then my question was like, what? So then no one in this world was ever like, hey, guys, why are we called Greg? Like, no one thought about that. Like, I feel like if that was the reason, it would have been like a discussed history thing. Because, like, someone must have asked that question at some
Like
point.
he was the first teacher or something. That would have made
Yeah.
sense. Like he was the first
Yeah.
teacher, so we called ourselves.
Well, if
after
we're
him.
thinking about this as like religion, like I feel like the name Greg would have become like this thing. like look at how many Muhammads there are in the world. That's like a
Mhm.
religious thing, right? Meanwhile, we have not met a single character whose name is Greg so far, except for this one guy. And like, it's just,
Aren't they all just named Greg at the end of the day?
Yeah, they're all Greg.
we're all Greg, I
We're
guess.
all
I
Greg.
don't know. Yeah, it just, that one totally felt like, oh, you're just trying to be like, I hear you, and I'm trying to do better. And I didn't question it too much because I was just like, okay, you're just trying to like not make amends in some way.
I think he was my
but that was
favorite
funny.
Saint, though. I liked like how he was described as like not having a shape and changing all the time. I thought that was cool. Everyone else was like, take it or
Freaked
leave it.
me
I don't
out.
care about the bees. I don't care about the dragon. But that was
What's
sick.
his name? I like the dragon the best personally. What's his name?
I like the
Juris?
dragon too.
Juris.
Juris. There we go. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
just,
he was mean, and I like
spiritual
mean
mentor.
characters.
He felt like
That's why he and Zoya got along so well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like those scenes. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that
Chelsea,
scene
I
when
feel like we've steamrolled you, yeah.
no, but like that just reminds me of like when he destroys her amplifier. I was like, no, like,
No, it was horrible. I was like, how dare you?
because we've just been told for like the past couple of books that like the amplifiers are a huge deal and like are crucial to like the very powerful Grisha, and then he just destroys it like so easily.
Yeah. No, and I think
And I feel like-
Go ahead.
Go Hannah. You go, Hannah.
Okay, I was just gonna say I didn't like on his own. I don't think I care much about him, but the just the fact that he was the only character that really like kind of tested Zoya to the like none of the other people ever, like even when she was butting heads with Alina, it never got to the point where you felt like Zoya wasn't kind of in control of at least of herself, whereas in this particular dynamic he kind of like completely like shattered her everything, which I mean that was sad at the beginning. I was like, how dare you, I hate you. And then as that story kind of went along, I was like, okay, I can forgive you. But then when he died, I really forgave him because he's dead now. So I'm like, okay, you have made up for what you did.
He had
so
to
as
die
a, yeah.
for you to forgive him.
Yeah. Listen, some characters suck because of what they do. And if they don't get the comeuppance that I think they deserve, then this is why when Mal came back, I was like, how dare.
Oh my god. And it's always comes back to
We're not
Mal
gonna
for you.
start this again, but I'm just letting you in on my thinking.
I feel like that was the part that like I stuck with the most, was the whole like I sort of like the idea of like they lost their way to like the original like powers of like everybody can control everything, and it's not just like one, like it's not like the airbending situation in Avatar where everybody just has a specific thing that they're good at. But also at the same time, like the whole idea of like unlimited power is like, then what the fuck was the Darkling here for doing? Like, you know, like there was a little bit of like, then everybody could be that powerful. It didn't just have to be the Darkling. And so why was he the special? Like, you know, like there was something there about the sticking of like everybody could be that powerful, and therefore the entire trilogy sort of like it has.
But isn't the whole thing is like, because now I'm trying to think, like, is it that they whoever they are that decided Grisha have to use their power this way? Is that like it's like the whole thing with Harry Potter, where like before you start using wands, you can do magic without wands, but then when you get indoctrinated and go to school, you can only use. So part of me is like, is that like, so who is that person? Who are these big bads that decided?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like I would have liked if they'd said like the people who can't do it sort of were like, here, like you can. They sort of like tricked them in like the church to be like, this is the only way you can do magic. Like I thought that would have been interesting as a way to oppress people who have more power than you, but that's not the way. Like that's me writing fanfic right now. That's not I think how it's gonna go.
I always thought it was the Darklings, like it would be in his favor to make everybody else stay in their lane.
Okay.
And not know that there's more
like
possibility.
That. Okay.
And like since he basically ran the school for like years.
But then why wouldn't Bagra know?
True, Bagra.
Because Bagra taught him. Yeah.
And Bagra's his mommy.
Yeah.
And mommy would know.
Mommy?
Well, so then why would all the Grisha like that predate like the Darkling and Bagra have been like still in a cast of sorts? Like why wouldn't they have been like, we know Morozova could do, like,
were they? Because the whole idea, like when Juris was teaching Zoya, he's like, we didn't use, I think he says at some point, like, we didn't really have those terms that you guys used, squalor or whatever.
But then why were all the saints typecast? Like, whenever you get told about like a saint that was also a Grisha, they're like, and they were a fabricator, or they were like a corporality, like
But
they
that's
were
like
like
I'm saying, is that
now, in the
revisionist?
now
Like,
times
is that
looking
what?
back, yeah.
Yeah,
true.
because
Also the thing-
Juris doesn't refer to himself that way. Like
And he
Juris
also
does.
doesn't. He can't use the tide maker stuff. He said like that's his weakness. So maybe people just lean toward what they were naturally good at, and that's why they appear to only be one thing, but they could technically do
Yeah.
Maybe.
everything.
I also definitely thought that they said at some point like Grishas with a lot of talent can access this. Like I
Yeah.
thought that, so in that way it's not like every Grisha can be as powerful as like these saints and now Zoya are. And then like another weird thing that I didn't understand was how Elizaveta had like hung out with the Darkling, and then but then how did the Darkling not know that like this stuff was possible and know more about her?
I guess she meant like my guess when I was reading that, because I was trying to figure out the ages also between the Saints and the Darkling. I was like, so is she younger than him? But I think where I came to it, and this is in my mind figuring things out, I don't think it was actually explicitly said in the text, is that she isn't younger than him, but she pretended to be different people throughout the years that he interacted with. I think that's kind of where I came to it, because the way that she talks about it, that's kind of the impression that I got. Maybe he now knows who she is, but when he met her as a younger version of herself, it was actually just her pretending to be someone else. I don't know. I
I took it as like they were all around the same age of like the pre anybody having a school, having like a sect of like what kind of Grisha they were. They were all just like Grisha, because he talks about the time where they were persecuted. So like he was clearly alive back when people were being killed for being Grisha, because he had to hide his power. So I think they were just all alive at that time, and they had met each other. And then they had like their little like martyrdoms where they all died. But he didn't know that they actually lived on.
In the first trilogy, am I just making this up? But in the first trilogy, isn't it that he actually created the second, like he created the second army. So he's the one who created this whole system. Like it was the Darkling. So like, it was Agatha all along. It was
Agatha all along, but it was the Darkling,
so,
yes.
Yeah, so he created this system of like, you only do your thing and that's it. And I'm the only one who does everything. Like I'm the most powerful person. Except for the people that I like the Jenias and the Alinas that I will pick at and like cultivate their powers because I want them to have
I think Dulcie's
more power that I
right,
can use.
Like, I think Dulcie's theory was right that like the Darkling was the one that really enforced like, oh no, like you can only do specific things because he lived in the time before where you could really just do whatever the fuck your magic said you could do.
Because his grandfather, dad, dude, whatever. Like he was kind of like a healer / a fabricator because he tried to fix his daughter and he did fix her, which is healing. Like that's healer stuff. But also he was the greatest fabricator to live.
It wasn't just the magic at that point. It was him drawing from like the whatever the fuck Mersault is.
That's true.
Dark magic. I don't know.
Whatever the hell that is. So then my question is this. So the Saints were around in the normal timeline for the period of time up until the fold was created. Is that correct? Am I thinking, is that right?
Yeah.
And then they got banished to the fold area. Okay.
Which, how did that happen again? How did they get like stuck in the fold?
Because of Mervost or whatever that thing is
dark
called.
magic. There was I didn't understand the explanation of how they got stuck there.
I think we're thinking a little too hard.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. She doesn't explain it, so you just can't think too hard about it. You just kind of have to be like, okay, on to the next thing.
I think it's to the whole everything's tied to everything. Like the reason Nikolai's demon reemerged was because Mersault was being used elsewhere. Like whatever the fuck. Rose Lady, whose name y'all have been saying it. My brain will not stick.
Elizaveta?
I think.
Okay. Well, Rose Lady. She was using little bits of magic, so that awakened his magic. So I think they're trying to like tie in like magic like touches everything, and because they were so powerful, they were drawn to the most powerful place where magic had been used up until that point, which was the fold. Like that's why they were dragged into it, was because of that. I don't know. And could be writing fanfic right now.
Okay.
Listen, I'm willing to go along with it.
Okay.
I don't
restore logic.
When I read these books, I don't, and most books, to be honest, I don't try to think too hard about magical systems
Mhm.
because I know the moment I start doing that, I'm just gonna start like not liking it. So I like that's why I'm such a character reader, partly is because like, okay, like I can kind of understand the magic fairly enough to get through the story. So yeah, I just kind of didn't really dig into it too much, although I had the questions in my mind and I was just like, okay, let's just ignore it, focus on the story. But yeah.
We've been talking about that section a lot, but I need to know, what was your feelings about Nina falling for Hannah? That whole situation. Let's second Fearden. Why not? Spicy. Let's go for it.
She has a type.
Clearly.
She has a type.
Tall blonde Feardens. Well, she's not blonde, is she?
She's not blonde, she's
not
a
blonde.
redhead.
British, yeah. It's
She's
funny,
red.
a redhead falling for redhead, of course.
Yeah, she was it was just like you said in the introduction, like it was on site. I was like, the moment she starts describing her hair, I'm like, girl, you're in love, like from the first second. So that was hilarious to kind of just see that. I'm into it. I'm interested to see how that develops. But I'm into it. I didn't like the it's not that I didn't like it. I wish we had more time with Hannah kind of exploring all of that trauma
Yeah.
with her dad and being a heart render / healer all along and all of that stuff. I'm like, girl, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Nina essentially just fell in love with the Fearden version of herself. Okay, another redhead, another heart render, doesn't like to
I get it.
rules,
Isn't that like
doesn't be like a lady, likes to be like disguises and run around and like
yeah.
very resourceful. I was like, okay, well, narcissism.
It's a good match. I think it's a good match.
I think she needs more time on her own, personally.
Probably, yeah.
I mean,
Before
it sounds like
she-
she had a shit ton of time just
Well,
carrying
can we-
around the ex-boyfriend's body for a
But
bit.
that doesn't count because she's carrying around the literal body. Talk about fucking baggage.
Yeah, but then as soon as she gets rid of the literal baggage, she falls in love again.
That's what I'm saying. She needs more time
Yeah. Can we
without
actually
the
just
baggage.
take a second to figure out the time, all the time that happened? And because so then it's been like what, 6 months since Matthias died? Would that be accurate? Because they've been in Fjerda for 2 months.
Yeah.
They've been so they've been in Fjerda for 2 months. She says that at some point, and I in my mind had thought that they just came straight from Matthias's death to Fjerda, but then there's a part when Zoya and Nikolai are talking, and Zoya's like, "Why'd you send her away?" And he's like, "She spent months just moping in the palace." So then I was like, "Oh, okay, so there's some time." But then my bigger question is like, how long has it been since the Darkling was banished? Because Adric was like 14, 13
Yeah,
at that
that's
point.
it.
And
he's
now
like a
he's
commander now.
He's like,
yeah.
3 years, they said.
3
Yeah, so
years
he'll
they
be, like,
said.
Just had the
But he's like
the timelines are
17
different.
now?
Are you
Because of the like Six of Crows
the
period.
timelines are different? Yeah. Six of Crows is
But-
a different timeline. It's after everything that happens in the first trilogy. So
But
like
then has it been 3 years since Six of Crows, or has it been 3 years
No.
since the
3 years
Darkling
since the
died?
original trilogy, because that happens first and then it's Six of Crows. But they fucked around with the
But
timeline for
that's-
the show.
See, that fucks up with my mind because Zoya was training Nina before Six of Crows, and
Mhm.
Nina was like 16 at that point, and now she's still 18. So I'm just like, I don't understand how
No, I
old
think
everyone is.
There was like a year between the first trilogy and Six of Crows because they
Okay.
were like, I remember that there were lots of references to like Alina, and had been like a while ago or something. So I think it had
So
been
then
a year.
is Adric younger than Nina? Because Adric
No,
is supposed to be-
they say that they both
They both
in the
were the
original
same
attack
age.
they like left the little palace together.
Yeah, they were at
Because-
Crescent.
but he didn't go and she was like, he was a bit older than me. But then if it's only been 3 years, he's only 17. I'm just like, what's happening with the ages in this? Like, that's what I mean.
But
That's part that
he-
fucked me up. Is like, if it's only been 3 years, then Adric is only 17, and Nina says she's 18 in this book. Like, she says that. So
Yeah.
I was just like, hold
I
up.
thought he was
What's
15 in the
happening?
original. I thought he was 15 in the original trilogy.
Maybe I could be wrong.
He's like
I
he was
guess.
in
like
the
the
first
same
book,
age
he's
as
like
her.
12 or 13, but the trilogy happens over a few years, does it not? So
That's
he
true.
like ages up in the trilogy,
That's true. That's
and
true.
then it's
okay.
like been 3 years from that.
I think he's
Okay.
also like mentally he feels a lot more mature.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, can we talk
He
about
feels
how
like
and
a grizzled 20-something. Like, I was shook
and
when I saw Audric again. I was like, what happened to you, my guy?
and I was super offended on his behalf every time Nina made fun of him. I was like, girl, that is a veteran right there. respect your elders. This guy fought in the war, and what did
Lost
you
his
do?
arm.
Yeah, what did you do?
Military propaganda worked on you, Hannah.
Oh my God.
Respect your veterans.
Not all of them, just this one.
Oh
I
my
was
God.
just like,
the fucking name the villagers gave him, Adric the Uneven.
just
I
like what the
screamed
It's a
when I read
good
that.
joke, but y'all need to stop.
A great
I
joke,
thought-
even.
No,
I
I
thought it
just-
was funny because there's so many patron saints in like in Catholicism, and that the you know, a lot of people, like, just seemingly ordinary people are named patron saints. So I thought that was a nice little.
it gave me
It was
Bran
good.
the Broken vibes from Game of Thrones, which I don't love that because I hate that whole, just hate that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I kind of get why Nina was kind of like annoyed by him though, because she just spent 2 years doing her own thing, not being commanded by anyone. Because even when like Kaz was commanding them, it was like they were all in it for their own things, and now she has to like listen to someone tell her stuff. And I kind of got it was annoying, but I got where she was coming from, being annoyed by everything that he's telling her and just going off and doing her own things like Nina. Which is why I kind of wish we had more time to explore the fallout of all of that and all of this. I just feel like Nina needed more time, but not in this book. Like I'm like, maybe she needs her own book. I don't know, but it just, yeah.
Do you think we're gonna
Can
see?
we
Well,
also-
Dulcie, you can't talk, but do you think we're gonna see the crows at any point in book 2?
Dulce
Dulcie's not gonna get.
won't talk.
I think so. I feel like
Yeah. They mentioned Kaz like a few times, but like in conversation, like that fucker or whatever. So I feel like he's gonna be in.
and they mentioned Kirch, whatever, however you pronounce it, enough times that I feel like we're gonna see them somehow become involved with all this situation.
Yeah.
In
I
the next
also,
book.
can I just say, I was really devastated at the very end when Nikolai's like, yeah, Shoe Princess, I'm gonna marry you. And I was like,
Listen,
we just talked about all this.
You need the pining to happen in book 2. It
I
can't just be
know.
smooth sailing. They're making out together. There needs to be a princess involved in some way.
I mean, I know it's not gonna happen probably, but it is interesting to see him take that position because it's very unlike him to be the kind of person who's like, I'm gonna force someone to marry me and like live a life where they're miserable their whole life.
But
And it
then
kind of speaks to where he
killed
is.
Isaac.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it speaks to
Yeah.
where he is as like mentally and like emotionally, psychologically. Which can we talk about how well? Part of why I love the Zoya chapter so much is that it really is taking in everything that Zoya went through in the trilogy and like exploring that. Like when the Starless Saint people show up and she just loses her mind because she's like, y'all like you weren't even around, don't know what happened, and you're coming here to like do all this, and just her still processing her grief and all of that stuff. I thought that was done well, personally.
And Jenya being like, this is what he did to me, to Yuri, being like, this is the person that you worship. This is like the cruelty that he actually like inflicted on people that isn't in the books. So I thought like I really liked like all the ways they didn't like shy away from that kind of stuff, and we're like showing like this is how the world sees it, but this is actually what happened.
And even when Nikolai does that too with Yuri, he was like, yeah, the things that he said he wanted, I also want. But when like he said he wanted this, he turned right around and turned his back on everyone, like as soon as it didn't serve him. And I loved that whole monologue that Nikolai went on.
See, and that makes my point that they're the same fucking coin, as I said in the original trilogy. That
Okay, but
Nikolai
like calls to
things
like,
like
and
the
he's
dark
a
thing,
demon
but
daddy,
light
so
and dark. Light and dark. It was just like the light and dark version of like they're the same person. It's just that one of them will only go to a certain point and one of them won't. So my theory. I'm just saying.
Nobody argued with you about this theory.
I know.
We all
but
accepted
I
it.
am satisfied that I was correct.
I'm trying to remember a point when we argued with you about it. I'm like, we were not disagreeing with you on that.
I think
that I was right.
the cult stuff was so, it was like infuriating, but like because you were infuriated at the cult, but it was so like, I think it was so interesting for her to explore in this book, because when this book came out, it was like 2018, and it was like the middle of like everything that's happening in the States and sort of similar themes you were seeing there on the news, and you were like, oh. Yeah.
Well, it was also interesting because in the trilogy, we're so focused on Alina and Alina's crew. Like, we don't really spend much time outside of that. And so it makes sense that people don't actually know. People who weren't there and who didn't die, like people either died or were Alina's little crew, is where we ended up at the end of the third book. Everybody died who was opposed to the Darkling, except for Alina's little crew. Like, that was it. And the Sun Saint people who are, I'm still like, when are we going to get more explanation and like exploration of because the apparat is just hanging out, and I'm like, this guy is dangerous. Somebody please deal with him. like those
And,
are
like,
the
what
only
happened to the people who
survivors.
got her powers? Like, we didn't see anybody who got her powers, and you think like Nikolai would have a closer eye on them. To be honest,
I think there was a mention that like they were being trained at some point. It was mentioned, I think, that they were being trained.
Yeah, I thought there were some maybe involved in that spectacle that they arranged to like show off the weaponry and stuff.
Yes, I truly, again, too sweet by that point reading the book. Let's be honest here.
They mentioned them very briefly.
Yeah,
very briefly though. I just feel like the apparat is just, he's been the whole series. I'm like, this guy, y'all are not paying enough attention to him.
Except for Zoya.
Except for Zoya, exactly.
Kill him.
Which I'm like, yeah, you're right.
You should.
But Nikolai's also right when he's like, and make him a martyr. Like, then that's, look at what's happening with the Darkling.
Yeah. I'm really interested to see, because there's so many threads that are just like loose now at the end of this. Like, the apparat is where there's the pretender now, and then also like the dad came forward, and so like, did the apparat have something to do with that? Probably.
I was so stressed when I was reading about the Fjordans coming for war, and then as soon as I read the dad's name, I was like, holy fucking shit, what's happening right now?
Yeah. Not good.
So
and then also, Kaiten, you know, what the fuck are you doing going in the ice court? He's gonna figure you out. Like, he knows something's like up with you. When she was like, oh, as soon as he learned that we were back in the town, everything was fine. And I was like, bitch, it's not fine. Yeah. Don't go there.
Yeah, Nina's a little bit in over her head, but it kind of makes sense with Nina's character. Like, it doesn't bother me because it fits Nina's character to be a little bit in over her head.
Also, I want her to save the Grisha that are imprisoned in the ice court, but like, you are not being smart enough, my guy, my girl.
Maybe that's where the Six of Crows will show up. They'll help her.
Please.
Again. Yeah. They did it once, they can do it again.
I'm trying not to like react to things. So I'm like,
Elsie turns off her camera suddenly.
I know.
While we're on this topic, my final question was any predictions for the next book. Obviously, Dulcie can't say shit because she knows what happens. But anyone else? Minus the crows.
There's so much, I feel like. And I know it's massive. I have it sitting right here. It's much bigger than the other one. I'm going to drop all my books. But I'm just like, can you actually do it in one book? Can you do it? I'm
excited because everybody I know who's read, like, they didn't like the first book, but they really like the second one. So I have high expectations for the second book, honestly.
Paige, we're going to have to fight over the one physical copy that is in our house.
You read it before me, because I'm going to read it the week of. So once you get it done before that week of, it doesn't matter.
I also have a copy I can lend to somebody who needs it.
Beautiful.
Excellent.
Predictions. I wonder how, not a prediction, but I'm just curious about the whole, and I don't think they'll spend enough time on it, the whole Navi-Yazam, Kurd, Ravka political situation. Because I'm like, the Kurds are being,
if anybody knows any fanfic about just the politics section of these books, please send them my way. The politics, that's what I want to read more about. I found those portions the best. The parts with Isaac and them trying to figure out how the fuck we're going to do all of it, I thought that was the best part of the book.
I love that part too.
Yeah.
Well, it's also like, not to make it, I think Leigh tries but does not always succeed about the race stuff, but
Mhm.
Novia Zem is clearly a racialized country. Meanwhile, the Kurds are Dutch people, basically. And I'm just like, y'all want to bomb your competition to oblivion, and you're using these other like marginalized, however you want to think of it, country to help you do it. And I'm just like, I'm curious how you're going to solve that one, because there's a lot of, and then there's the shoe situation, which I'm just like, I don't want to touch that. But there's
Yeah.
all that like political, racial, socio-political situation there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know that we'll spend enough time on that. We'll see, but I'm
No.
curious about that.
It's interesting to see them. They still have not explained why they're all at war with each other. No explanation
who?
of why. Like just feudal war for land.
Well, that's why I
guess.
think
like,
The borders.
that's why. Sorry, go ahead.
The borders.
the
They're at war with
ambiguous.
each other for the borders.
But that's why I think the Novia Zem Kirsch thing makes sense, because it's directly an economic thing
that
for
makes
them,
sense.
for those
Yeah,
two.
yeah.
But yeah, Fierda and Ravka and the Shuhan, I don't know.
Like, why
Like,
weren't they at war from the beginning? Like, we learned that the Lanislav king became king because he merged all these states together, like all these different kingdoms together to form the country. But why? So were they just always at war with these mini countries? And then
That's
like,
Ravka's entire identity. That's the shtick. That they've always been at war. They've never not been at war.
And then I think it's also like differing approaches to like Grisha and to like religion and stuff like that too has like strengthened those animosities.
if we're going back to the Russian thing, is it that Ravka is the USSR and is trying to basically make a bunch of people get along that shouldn't be getting along, and those other countries are like, no, we don't like that? I don't know. But that's not how it's written. So
no, yeah.
I don't know, because the thing is, if Ravka's Russia, then was she just like, but you know what? Shu will be the entire continent of Asia.
Asia, yeah.
Novi Zem
That
will
is
be
100,
every other colored continent.
Novia Zem is
in the world.
Africa.
And then we'll have the Dutch.
Yeah,
Like,
and then
really
like, we
weird
have like the
finding.
Wandering Isles, which is like
Ireland.
England-y kind of vibes. Australia, I also lumped that in there.
Well, so you
'cause,
know
like-
what? Novia Zem is actually, I think, the Caribbean, because isn't there the southern colonies that which I was upset about last book, like the southern colonies where Nikolai banished his parents. I'm like, whose colonies
No,
are
I
they?
think the southern colonies are the
Are the
Caribbean,
islands.
and Novia Zem is
Oh,
Africa.
okay. Sure.
I think
okay,
that's
one
the
way.
Oh.
distinction.
Maybe.
I
don't
would
know.
have to agree. I would have
As
to
soon as
agree.
I read colonies, I was like, that's the Caribbean right there. Like, there's no other way. Like, that's the
That
Caribbean.
makes sense. Yeah. I need to remember what Novia Zem looks like also. That's the other thing. I don't remember if it's an island or
It's
if
a
it's...
big continent. That's why
Oh,
I thought
okay.
it was Africa,
Yeah.
because it's a continent.
Well,
I mixed-
it looks like North America because it's on the other side.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah, okay.
Geographically.
Yeah.
You're right. That makes
We
sense.
decided the world was like 3 continents and then like 4 countries in the grid.
Yeah.
Very small world. Very small.
And then just Kirch in
Also
the
maybe
middle.
flat.
Yeah.
I've seen worse like map building.
That's true.
It's true.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious. I don't know if I have any other predictions. I mean, Zoya and Nikolai are going to get together, obviously.
When the princess was introduced, I was like, when he was like, we're gonna get married, I was like, that was slap Zoya. Like, they would just carry on, and the princess would be there. Like, that doesn't matter. But I like the angst.
But
That's about
I wonder if they're going to get married as king and queen, because Nikolai was seeming like he's starting to get a little uncomfortable with being king, given that he's also a pretender. He's like, I'm just as much of a pretender as all these other people.
But like,
So
when
I'm
he was
curious
doing
about
his
that.
woman thing, he was like, I'm gonna work toward being worth the crown. Like, I don't think he's giving up the crown.
Yeah.
I think he thinks
Yeah.
he was born to be king regardless of his bloodline. So
No,
he's
I know, but I mean, there was that moment where he was just like, I don't know, if I
He
have
did
any
hint
leg
at
to
the
stand
whole,
on.
like, he hinted at democracy, being like, I'm giving more
Yeah.
power to like ministers and
Yeah.
stuff. So maybe he like takes less power.
Becomes prime minister Nikolai as opposed to King Nikolai. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah.
Maybe Zoya just becomes CEO of Ravka.
CEO.
Yes,
Real boss.
I would be into it.
Control.
Just make Zoya the queen, emperor, empress person. Who needs anyone else?
Well, she
Also,
would miss
you
the
men-
fighting, I think, though.
Yeah.
When you mentioned the ministers, it just reminded me of that, like, there's that old man, General Kerrigan, in the book, and then, like, but then they named it, like, Bin Bonds as, like,
Bin Bonds.
Kerrigan.
Bin
I read
Bon.
this, like, a letter. I, like, was
Maybe
so confused.
maybe in the TV show, Ben Bonds is. I mean, this Kerrigan is gonna be the Yuri. I don't know.
See, like, I thought, like, maybe, like, in the show, they'd be like, she's a kid. And the kid is the person who's, like, is making dues for his father's, like, defecting of the, like, state or whatever.
I don't know.
But
It just feels
yeah,
like
it was sus that they chose that name specifically.
Yeah, it feels like
knowing-
it's more. I can't see them just doing that randomly. Like, I
No.
think there's something else that this show is trying to do there. So we'll see.
Yeah, I hope they introduce more of Nikolai's, like, story that we learned in these books into the show earlier.
Yeah.
Just because
I
I feel
can
like
see
we
them
need
doing
it.
that.
Sort of like what they did with Zoya. Like, bring it in a little bit earlier so we have, like, that backstory of why he wants to be king so that people can, like, root for him more than
I
just,
feel like
he's
they
hot.
will. That's what they've
Kind of.
done with the other characters so far. Like, we had the whole Nina Matthias storyline way before we get it in the book. We had the Kaz. We had a lot. We get a lot of stuff in here in the show that we don't get in the books until quite later on. So I think that they're definitely heavy on the exposition in the show, which I actually kind of appreciate.
I prefer.
'Cause it's like, just tell everybody what happened. Makes it easier.
Any last words from anyone else? I feel like we're hitting the, like, 1 hour mark. We've really dived into the sainthood of this entire book. I feel like that's where we spent most of our time. No? All
Read
right.
King of Scars. If you have, like, if
Well, yeah,
anybody
read this
hasn't,
book.
read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
You
read
can-
Where would it rank? Okay, my final question.
Oh.
My final question is, where
Oh.
would this book rank for you on, like, the so far of the series?
Oh fuck.
Can I split it up? Can I cut up the book?
Yeah.
The parts of the book.
You can cut out the Nina part. Where does the Nikolai and Zoya?
I think I like the Zoya parts a lot, so I think I would rank those up pretty high, possibly higher than the Six of Crows, which I had said that those are, in my quality wise, I think those are better than the trilogy. But if I'm just going by the Zoya parts only, that would go up here, and then everyone else can go underneath it.
Yeah, I think I like it equal to Six of Crows. I think, like,
That's what I was gonna say.
Oh.
It's, like, level.
I think
Minus the
mine would
Nina
be-
part.
I think mine would be just below Six of Crows.
Yeah,
Mm.
I gotta agree with Dulce on this one.
Although I also think that this is similar. It's less. Wow, sorry. It's less pronounced than the whole Six of Crooked Kingdom thing, where you need the two of them together. I personally feel. I think this one is also going to depend a little bit more on how Rule of Wolves goes. So I'm saying this now, but I reserve the right to take back everything that I said once I've read Rule of Wolves, because I do think this book ends and you really need the second book. Like, I have so many questions, so I need to know how and I believe Rule of Wolves is her last book in the Grishaverse, so
What?
all of these questions
Is it
better
a-
get
right?
answered.
Wasn't she working on a third Six of
She
Crows
said it-
book?
In interviews, she's been saying it's, like, her last book for now. She's gonna, like, focus on the show and everything, and then but then also she was like, maybe we won't get renewed and I'll need to write another book so I can keep making money.
Yeah.
I mean,
I do
that's
think
not
that
happening.
this book was like one of the better written one. Like, they just like keep progressing in terms of like the writing and I like the world building and just the way that she's like weaving things together, like elements from like ages ago that are like coming in now. So I really liked it. I put it high for that reason too. The fact that it's like a little bit more, I don't know, like sophisticated and it's like execution.
Her
There's-
writing
I
has
feel like-
definitely been just kind of going like
Yeah.
that.
There's
Yeah,
some
like
like
the
really
scene with
nice
the-
quotes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
The
have
scene with
like
the army was what put it
a
up
lot of,
above everything else for me. Oh my
a
God.
lot of things for nice quotes, because there's a lot of really good quotes. in this book. Oh, wait, we didn't talk about this. Leonie is the daughter that what's his name's mom died for.
Yeah,
Jasper's mom died for.
Jasper's mom.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, which I was like, so basically everyone is related. Like no new characters in this book. Hannah is what's his name's daughter. Leonie is the woman the reason that Jasper has no mom. Which
But, like,
I
that's
kind of
why I think we're gonna see some crows because
Yeah,
imagine Jasper
absolutely.
meeting Leonie. Like,
yeah. No, this is what I mean. I do think like everyone's gonna come together for a big like maybe a big showdown. I don't know, but everyone's gonna come together at some point in the next book because she tends to kind of do that thing where everyone knows each other.
Dulcie's like, cannot confirm or deny.
I admire your like
poker face.
I admire your ability to maintain that because I would not be here if I was.
I have like things I want to say and then I'm like, no, I can't say it.
Yeah.
I am excited to go back and rewatch the show with like this knowledge now, though. Like, I feel like it'll add to rewatching the show and seeing some stuff.
I think like when you finish Rule of Wolves, definitely go back and watch the show.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Don't twist my arm. Like I wasn't gonna do that.
Oh
already.
no, we
Like,
have
Rule
to
of
rewatch
Wolves,
the
like-
show.
Rule of Wolves also published right before the show premiered, so a lot of people finished it. Like I finished it right before watching the show.
Noted. So after Will of Wolves, there will be a watch party. We're gonna do that. Okay, guys, I'm going to end the live show here because we've been talking for an hour. You can find us on the internet elsewhere to talk about this book. So should you so choose, we'll be reading Rule of Wolves and doing a live show next month at some point, I believe. Yes.
We haven't decided
So you
on a
can-
date yet. But
We
we'll see.
haven't, but it'll be announced at some point somewhere on my channels. So look forward to us screaming more then, and have a good month-ish.
Bye.